They called it a fresh start, but to Jalen Brooks, it just felt like another ending. As the family's beat-up silver Honda cruised past the "Welcome to Plainfield" sign, Jalen kept his eyes glued to the window, watching rows of perfect houses blur together like a life he didn't belong to. His mom hummed quietly, tapping the steering wheel to a tune only she could hear. She tried to sound upbeat. She always did after every move. "You're gonna do fine," she said with a hopeful smile. But this was the third move in 4 years. New town, new school, same goodbye to everything he knew. He'd left behind friends, coaches, even his favorite gym, the one with the old punching bags and the smell of sweat and bleach. Now, he was just the new kid again, the quiet kid. And in places like this, being quiet only made you louder. Monroe Middle School rose in front of him like a quiet challenge. Low brick walls, tall oaks, and a sea of unfamiliar faces. Jalen stepped out of the car, shoulders tight, sneakers crunching against the pavement. He could already feel it. That shift in energy when someone new walks into a world already spinning. In the hallways, conversations dipped the moment he passed. Some students glanced, others just stared. No one smiled. In homeroom, the teacher, Miss Driscoll, gave him the usual intro. "This is Jalen Brooks. He's from Fort Wayne. Make him feel welcome." She meant well, but all it did was paint a target on his back. He sat at the last desk in the row. Just how he liked it, out of the way. But in middle school, silence doesn't protect you. By lunchtime, he'd already mapped the terrain. The loud ones ruled the cafeteria. The quiet ones hugged the walls and the eyes. They followed him. He chose a table near the windows, alone, away from the noise. Just him, a plastic tray of microwaved lasagna, and the weight of knowing someone was already deciding he didn't belong. He was mid-bite when the shadow fell across his tray. Jalen looked up. 3 boys stood over him. Colby, sharp cheekboned, eyes full of challenge. Austin, buzz cut, built like he wanted to be noticed. And Trent, the tag-along with too much laugh and too little spine. Colby leaned in. "You knew?" Jalen kept his voice even. "Yeah." Austin snorted. "Yo, is that your mom's lunch?" Laughter. Too loud. Too forced. Jalen looked down. He wasn't biting. That's what they hated. His stillness. Then Colby nudged the bag by his side. "What's in here? Karate belt? You gonna show us some flips?" Jalen replied without looking up. "I'm eating." Austin didn't like that. He slapped the milk carton off Jalen's tray. It burst open, a white stream spilling across the floor. That moment, the one where everything slows down, where fists tighten, jaws lock, and instincts beg to be unleashed. Jalen felt it, but he didn't move. Then, development. Sliding between them like it was second nature. "Back off." Colby raised his hands. "Relax, man. We're just saying hi." But his grin was too sharp, his voice too smooth. They were testing the waters, seeing how far they could push. And Jalen, he let it slide. Not because he was scared, but because his uncle's voice was louder than his anger. Control is everything. Power isn't in the punch. It's in the pause. When the lunch aide appeared, Colby shrugged. "Just spilled milk." They scattered, leaving Dev and Jalen in the mess. Dev grabbed some napkins and mopped up what he could. "You good?" he asked. Jalen nodded. Dev didn't push. He understood. In some battles, silence is its own kind of strength. Over the next few days, Jalen became part of the scenery, the quiet new kid who walked the halls like a shadow, but the silence didn't last. It started small, a bump in the hallway that felt too intentional. A book knocked off his desk when the teacher wasn't looking. Laughter that stopped just as he passed by. They never touched him. Not really. That wasn't their goal. They wanted inside his head. Jalen kept walking, kept breathing, kept remembering. You don't win by reacting. You win by staying centered. But even the strongest walls crack under pressure, and these boys weren't giving up. Then came gym, dodgeball, Coach Winfrey's version of controlled chaos, balls flying, laughter echoing, bodies ducking and diving. Jalen moved like he always did, balanced, quiet, precise. When he knocked Austin out with a clean shot to the shins, The sound of the ball hitting skin was louder than it should have been. Everyone saw it. And more importantly, Austin felt it. In the locker room afterward, the tension was thick. The air tasted like sweat and trouble. Austin muttered as he passed Jalen, "You think you're slick out there?" Jalen didn't flinch. "It's just a game." Colby stepped closer. "Nah, you made Austin look stupid." Jalen looked at them both. Calm, steady. "He got hit. That's all." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was loaded. They didn't respond, but they didn't need to. Jalen. Friday afternoon. The last bell rang, and Monroe Middle spilled into the open fields out back, where the old soccer nets rusted and the broken bleachers creaked in the wind. Most kids were waiting on rides. Jalen was just walking home. He always took the long way, but this time, that extra distance led him somewhere he couldn't ignore. He saw them, Colby, Austin, Trent, and Dev, backpack still on, surrounded, standing tall but cornered. He heard just enough. "You always playing bodyguard for him now? You sure you want to defend the quiet kid?" It wasn't a joke anymore. It was a setup. Jalen didn't hesitate. His walk didn't change. His face didn't shift. But Dev saw him coming. "Hey!" Dev called out, still locked in a stare. Colby turned. "Look who showed up. You bring back up now?" Jalen stepped beside Dev, eyes steady, voice low. "You done talking?" Colby blinked. "What?" I said, "Are you done?" Austin took a step forward, smirking. "Nah, we just getting started." And that's when he shoved Dev. Not hard, just enough to make a point. But that was enough. Jalen's hand shot out, catching Dev, steadying him, then turned his gaze to Austin. "Don't do that again." Austin puffed up. "Or what? You gonna cry?" And then it happened. Jalen moved. Fast, controlled. He stepped in, caught Austin's wrist, redirected his momentum, and swept his legs. Austin hit the ground, not hard, but hard enough. A beat of silence. Colby, Trent. Even Dev, frozen. Jalen didn't flex, didn't smile, didn't say a word. He looked down. "You good?" he asked Dev. Dev nodded, still stunned. Then Jalen turned and walked away. No cheers, no applause, just the quiet hum of wind and the sound of his footsteps fading away. Jalen didn't run. He didn't talk. He didn't even look back. As he walked away, the silence behind him said more than any words could. That night, he said nothing to his mom, just sat at the table, ate dinner, and nodded when she asked about his day. But she knew. A mother always knows. "You good?" she asked again. "I stopped with a friend," he said. That was all. She didn't press. She just watched him. And something in her eyes softened. The next morning, Monroe Middle felt different. It wasn't loud. It wasn't chaotic. But when Jalen walked through the front doors, he felt it. A pause in the hallway. A look from across the room. Not fear, just awareness. Austin wasn't laughing. Colby wasn't smirking. Trent kept his head down. And yet, it wasn't over. Jalen knew better. Silence doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes, it's the breath before the storm. In the cafeteria, Dev slid into the seat across from him. No big speech, just a smirk. "So, you trained her or something?" Jalen looked up. "Yeah, 8 years. My uncle taught me." Dev blinked. "Okay, yeah. That explains a lot." He laughed, nervous but real. Jalen didn't. He just shrugged. "Fighting's not the hard part," he said. "Not reacting is." Dev nodded slowly, his grin fading into something more thoughtful. "Well, for what it's worth, that reaction saved my butt." But Jalen wasn't smiling. He was watching, because he knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. By the next day, the story had changed. Some said Jalen flipped Austin like in a movie. Others claimed he body slammed him into the dirt. None of it was true, but Jalen didn't bother correcting anyone. He wasn't interested in fame. He wasn't interested in fear. He just wanted peace. But peace wasn't what came next. What came was curiosity. Eyes followed him now in the halls. Conversations paused when he passed. Not with mockery, with something else. respect, or maybe caution. Even teachers noticed. The way he moved, calm and focused. The way he never raised his voice, but somehow it carried weight. Colby and his crew, silent. They didn't make jokes anymore. Didn't throw shoulders in the hallway. They passed him like he didn't exist. But Jalen knew better. That silence wasn't surrender. It was pressure, waiting to shift, and not all the pressure was from them. Miss Driscoll, his homeroom teacher, pulled him aside after class. "I heard what happened," she said. "Are you okay?" Jalen didn't flinch. "I didn't throw a punch," he said. She nodded. "I know. Just be careful. When things go quiet, it doesn't always mean they're done." And she was right, because what happens after the fight is where the real battle begins. The next few days felt heavier, not louder, just heavier. The way some students moved out of Jalen's path, the way teachers looked just a little longer when he entered the room, the way Dev smiled more carefully, like he didn't know what came next either. Even Jim felt different. Coach Winfrey pulled him aside. "Your name came across my desk," he said. Jalen waited. "Couple teachers think maybe you should talk to someone, a counselor, just to check in." "I'm fine," Jalen replied. Coach studied him for a long moment. Instead, he flipped to the back of his notebook and began to write. Not a story, not an essay, just thoughts, half sentences, fragments, a puzzle of feelings that didn't have to make sense. He didn't know it then, but that quiet moment, pen against paper, would matter. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is sit still and feel it all. 2 weeks later, the school counselor, Ms. Keene, stepped into advisory period holding a clipboard. "Today we're doing something different," she said. "One question, one answer, no pressure, just honesty." Each student received a card, a simple prompt printed on it. Most groaned. A few rolled their eyes. "Jalen?" He sat quietly, flipping his card over. It read, "What's something people assume about you that isn't true?" He stared at the words for a long moment, then placed the card face down. One by one, the room shifted. A girl with perfect sneakers admitted she shared a one-bedroom apartment with her mom. A boy who always joked about everything said he didn't want to go home after school. It wasn't dramatic, it was real. When Ms. Keene turned to Jalen, she didn't pressure him, just asked gently, "Would you like to share?" He hesitated. He then finally spoke. "People think I'm angry because I'm quiet. I'm not. I just think before I talk." That was it. But in that moment, you could hear the air shift. Sometimes the most powerful words are the ones you don't shout. After class, Ms. Keene caught up with Jalen in the hallway. Her voice was soft, but there was something behind it. Respect. "I heard what happened behind the field," she said. "Students talk, but what they're really saying is that you didn't let it change you." Jalen stayed quiet. "I'm not here to scold you," she continued. "Actually, I think you handled it better than most adults would have." Jalen finally looked up. "Then why does it still feel like I did something wrong?" Ms. Keene sighed. "Because people aren't used to seeing control from someone they've already misunderstood." Then she handed him something, a flyer, freshly printed. Student voice circle, real talk, real change. 12 students, one goal, change how the school worked from the inside. "I want you to be in it," she said. He hesitated. "I'm not really a leader," she smiled. "You don't have to be loud to lead." And for the first time, Jalen felt like someone wasn't just seeing what he did, but who he was. The first student voice circle met after school the following week. 12 students, 2 teachers, and no real agenda. Just space, a space to talk about bullying, about pressure, about being misunderstood. At first, the room was stiff. Kids looked down, arms crossed, but slowly the stories came out. One student shared how they pretended to be funny so no one noticed their home life. Another admitted they were tired of always being seen as the angry one, when all they wanted was to be heard. And then Jalen spoke, not loud, not long. "My uncle taught me that real strength is how much you can carry without letting it change who you are." The room went still. Even the quietest kids leaned in. Dev gave a small clap. Others nodded. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't flashy, but it was real. From that day on, the circle became a regular thing, and Jalen, without ever asking for it, had become a leader, a quiet one, but a leader just the same. It was a quiet Monday morning. His mom had already left for work. The house was still, just the sound of a spoon tapping a bowl of cereal gone soggy. Jalen opened his laptop, refreshing his inbox, and there it was. Subject line, apology. The sender, Austin. His fingers hovered over the mouse. Click. No emojis. No dramatic language. Just words. Hey, I'm not good at saying this in person, so I'm writing it. I was wrong. Wrong for messing with you. Wrong for dragging Dev into it. Wrong for acting like you didn't matter. I thought being loud made me tough, but you showed everyone what real strength looks like. I don't expect anything back. Just felt like I couldn't walk around pretending anymore. Signed, Austin. Jalen read it once, twice, a third time. He didn't feel triumphant, not relieved either. Just still. Later that morning, he passed Austin in the hallway. Austin gave him a quick nod. Not a word, just a gesture. Jalen didn't nod back, but he didn't ignore it either. Because sometimes the silence says enough. Something had changed, not in a loud, dramatic way, but in the spaces between. In the hallway when a kid dropped their notebook. Someone stopped to help. Two sixth graders argued over a basketball. And for once, it didn't end in shoving. Even the cafeteria, once charged with tension, felt quieter, lighter. Jalen hadn't made a speech. He hadn't asked for change. But his actions, his silence, his calm, his strength had started something. Teachers noticed. Miss Keene, the counselor, smiled more when he passed by. Even it came from control, from restraint, from knowing who you are and not letting anyone else decide that for you. Jalen still sat in the back, still kept his answers short, but people looked at him differently now. Not as the quiet kid, but as the one who changed everything, by refusing to become what they expected. It was after the final bell, when the school emptied into buses and backpacks. Jalen was heading for the doors, the way he always did, when Miss Keene's voice stopped him. Jalen, can I talk to you for a minute? He followed her to the side of the hallway, just out of view, just quiet enough to be real. I know what happened behind the field, she said. And I know the teachers tried to handle it quietly, but students talk. Jalen stayed silent. He was used to talking with his eyes, not his words. I'm not here to scold you, she added. I think you handled it better than most adults would have. He looked up, confused. Then he asked the question that had been sitting on his chest. Then why does it still feel like I did something wrong? Miss Keene gave a soft sigh. Because people aren't used to seeing calm and control from someone they've already misunderstood. And in that moment, Jalen realized it wasn't just about the shove. It was about who people thought he was before he even said a word. It was Sunday night when the email came in, but Jalen didn't see it until the next morning. The kitchen was quiet, his mom already gone for work. A bowl of soggy cereal sitting untouched in front of him. He clicked open his inbox. One subject line stood out, apology. It was from Austin, no flashy words, no emojis, just plain, raw truth. Hey, it began. I'm not good at saying stuff like this in person, so I'm writing it. I was wrong. For messing with you, for dragging Dev into it, for acting like you didn't matter. Jalen read the words slowly, twice, then a third time. I thought being loud made me tough, Austin had written, but you showed everyone what real strength looks like. I don't expect you to say anything back. I just didn't want to keep pretending like I didn't know what I did. There were no fireworks, no sudden swell of music, just stillness. Jalen didn't feel triumphant. He didn't even feel relieved. He just felt seen. That morning at school, Jalen passed Austin in the hallway. No words were exchanged. Austin didn't stop him, didn't try to explain or pretend. He just gave a small nod. Quick, honest. And Jalen didn't nod back. But he didn't ignore it either. Because sometimes silence is louder than an apology. Later that day, Dev found him outside the media room, tape in hand, posters for the next student voice circle stacked nearby. "You see the email?" Dev asked. Jalen just nodded. "Dude's trying," Dev said in his usual awkward way. "Yeah," Jalen replied, folding the last piece of tape. "I don't need to talk to him." Dev nodded back. "Some stuff. Doesn't need a reply." And that was it. No revenge. No confrontation. Just the quiet aftermath of something that had finally shifted. They finished hanging the last poster. The words printed across the top were simple. "Your voice matters here." And somehow, Monroe Middle felt different. Not perfect, not fixed, but softer. Jalen noticed it in the little things. A kid dropped a notebook in the hallway. Someone helped him pick it up. Two sixth graders arguing over a basketball. No shoving, just talking. Even the cafeteria felt less charged. The laughter didn't sting as much. Jalen didn't do much. He didn't want the attention, but he had started something. A quiet shift, and now kids were watching each other. Not to judge, but to understand. Because one act, one moment of calm in the face of chaos, can ripple through an entire school. It was just another science class, the kind with group projects and substitute teachers who didn't really care. Jalen was sketching out ideas for a straw tower when a shadow appeared beside him. Colby, not loud, not smug, just uncertain. "I'm not good at this," Colby muttered, motioning to a pile of crushed straws. Jalen looked up, guarded. He waited. "I just say stuff and people laugh," Colby said quietly. "Doesn't mean I know what I'm doing." Jalen didn't nod, didn't smile, but he stood and walked over to Colby's table. It wasn't a grand gesture, no handshake, no apology, but it was something, a beginning, because sometimes real change doesn't start with words. It starts with showing up. The first meeting was small, 12 students, 2 teachers, and no script. They sat in a circle in the library, backs straight, voices low, not quite sure what they were supposed to say. Ms. Keene explained, "This is your space. No judgment, no pressure, just truth." One student shared how people assumed she was rich because of her shoes, but really her mom worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. Another said he played the class clown because silence at home was heavier than laughter at school. Jalen listened, quiet as always. But when the circle came to him, he spoke. "People think I'm angry because I'm quiet. I'm not. I just think before I talk." Nothing more. Just that. But the room changed when he said it, because sometimes just speaking your truth is the loudest thing you can do. After that first meeting, Miss Keene pulled Jalen aside. Not to scold him, not to question, just to invite. She handed him a flyer, words printed in bold. "Student Voice Circle, real talk, real change." "I want you in it," she said. "Actually, I want you to help lead it." Jalen blinked. "I'm not a leader," he replied, but she just smiled. "You don't have to be loud to lead." That line stuck with him, because deep down he knew it was true. He hadn't asked for attention, he hadn't chased respect, but people were watching, and what they saw in Jalen wasn't fear. It was quiet strength, and now that strength had a purpose. Something had shifted at Monroe Middle School, not in the way that made headlines or trended online, but in the subtle, powerful ways that truly mattered. The cafeteria, once a stage for mockery and exclusion, had started to feel safer, calmer. The loudest voices were no longer the cruelest, and laughter wasn't weaponized the way it had been. Students held doors open, they shared tables. Even the smaller moments, a nod in the hallway, someone helping pick up dropped books, carried new weight. And Jalen, he stayed exactly the same. Still quiet, still steady, still sitting in the corner at lunch with Dev, occasionally joining him. No longer out of sympathy, but as a friend. The whispers that had once followed him turned into space. Space to just be. Not a legend, not a fighter. Just Jalen. Because what he proved that day behind the school fence wasn't that he could win a fight, it was that he didn't need to. Every Thursday after school, the library filled with voices that used to stay silent. The student voice circle, an idea born from conflict, was now a cornerstone of Monroe Middle. What started with 12 kids became 20, then 30, students from all grades, all backgrounds. Some who had never spoken up in class now shared stories that silenced the room. Jalen didn't talk much in those meetings, but when he did, people leaned in. Not because he was loud, because he was real. He talked about balance, about control, about choosing not to fight even when the world begged you to. And somehow that calm presence in a sea of middle school chaos became a kind of leadership no one had seen coming. He wasn't trying to lead, he just was. It wasn't long before teachers began to notice something else. Not just fewer hallway incidents, but more eye contact, more listening, more respect. And at the center of it all, quiet, steady, unchanged, was Jalen. At the next staff meeting, Ms. Keene brought his name up. He didn't ask for it, she said, but he earned it. That Friday, during morning announcements, Principal Hayes read off a list of students receiving commendations for leadership and character. Jalen Brooks was the last name called. In homeroom, a few kids clapped. Dev patted his back. But Jalen, he just stared ahead. Because none of this had ever been the goal. He didn't want to be celebrated. He wanted to be understood. That weekend, Jalen and his mom sat together on the back porch. The sky was soft with fading light, and the quiet hum of suburban life buzzed faintly in the background. She stirred her tea, watching him for a moment. "You seem lighter," she said. Jalen looked up from his notebook, the one where he'd been jotting down stray thoughts since everything happened. He gave a small smile. "I think I am." "You found your place?" she asked gently. He paused, then nodded. "Yeah, but not because I fit in, because I didn't let them change who I was." His mom reached over, squeezed his hand. "That's what makes you strong?" Jalen didn't respond right away. He just looked out over the yard, the same yard that had once felt like just another place in a string of temporary homes. But now, it felt different, because he was different. Not louder, not tougher, just more himself. The following Monday, as Jalen walked through the school's front doors, he noticed something. Not the looks, not the whispers, but the silence. The kind of silence that didn't come from fear anymore, but from respect. The halls felt different now, because one kid, quiet, controlled, and unshakably true to himself, had chosen not to strike back with fists, but with character. He hadn't thrown punches to earn attention. He hadn't sought revenge to feel powerful. Instead, he had shown everyone that real strength is knowing who you are and never letting the world convince you otherwise. And maybe that's the real takeaway here. That kindness isn't weakness. That calm isn't surrender. And that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stand still, speak softly, and let your actions echo louder than any insult ever could. So if this story moved you, even just a little, share it, drop a comment, leave a like. Subscribe if you believe in stories that lift us up and remind us what strength really looks like. Because somewhere out there, another kid like Jalen is walking into a new school, being underestimated, being tested. And they need to hear this. They need to know. You don't have to be loud to be strong. You don't have to fight to be powerful. You just have to stay true to who you are. Let's make sure this message gets to them. Share it right now, because stories like this, they're meant to be passed on.